Okay, welcome back. So this last session before lunch is an interesting one. Let me share my screen. So actually, before I do that, you're going to do it on your own first, and then you're going to pair up with someone in a breakout room. So we're assigning all of you in pairs with each other. And then you will share with that person, and then we'll come back to the main room. I hope you all have paper. We should have told you to have paper, but anyway, if you don't have an A4 sheet, which will be ideal, then tear a page out of your journal. So this is the exercise. How do you experience the inferior and superior poles within yourself that are internalized from the culture or from the society? So inferior, where you feel less than, and superior when you feel more than. So these are poles within ourselves. You know, there oftentimes we feel better than, and then oftentimes we feel worse than, or not as good as. So step one, you're going to fold your paper in half lengthwise, so the length of the paper. And then you're going to write on the left side ways in which you generally feel superior to many others. How do you feel superior? You feel superior because you have a PhD. You feel superior because you're taller. You feel superior because you're Chinese. And then on the right side, list the ways you ordinarily feel inferior. So you feel inferior because you don't have a PhD. You feel inferior because you're short. You feel inferior because you're dark, you know, whatever reasons you have, and you know, be honest with yourself. So step three, step three, choose one or two of the ways in which you feel superior. I guess maybe the one that is most prominent for you. Write down any thoughts and or feelings you may have around the fear of slipping from this place of relative superiority. How you, something that you feel superior about, and then the thoughts of feelings of fear of slipping from that place of superiority. Okay, so you're not choosing all the ways you feel superior, one or two ways. Okay, and the same thing, note any familiar interior dynamics between the ideas of superiority and the feelings and ideas of possibly slipping downwards. Note any familiar interior dynamics between the ideas of superiority and the feelings and ideas of possibly slipping downwards. Share anything interesting you have noted with a partner. There is the subtle distinction. So the other one is thoughts and feelings you may have around the fear of slipping. And then the other one, familiar dynamics inside yourself between the ideas of superiority and the feelings and ideas of slipping downwards from that superiority. So we're going to break you up very soon. It's already in the chat. Let's spend the 15 minutes. You can just mute yourself, and then I'll take note. We'll come back together when you're done, and then we'll break you up. So fold your paper and get going. Thanks. Okay, it's 11:53. I don't know how you guys are doing. I see some heads are still bent, so I guess you're still writing. Okay, so as I said earlier, we will put you in pairs. So there'll be like 14 or 15 breakout rooms. And you're just going to share with each other. you just take turns, one shares, the other one listens, and then the other one shares, and then the other one listens. And then if you have some time for, more generative dialogue, please go ahead. So 11:55, we will come back. Noel, if you can set the breakout rooms for 20 minutes. So we'll be back at 12:15. Okay. Yeah? All right, okay. See you in 20 minutes. Okay, I don't know what that was like. Love to hear from any one of you who wants to share what that was like.
So to help you to understand easier, now sense of superiority and inferiority. So for me, the superiority is to be able to assess the situation as it is, just as it is, when I'm not overwhelmed with emotions. The inferior side would be when emotions, for some reason, emotions or pressure builds up, right? And then I will not be able to assess the situation as it is, or correctly. I might be biased in a different sense. So when we talk about the fear of falling from superiority, like take it in this context. When I'm overwhelmed with emotions, that's when I cannot assess it correctly. I might overreact to a situation or underreact to a situation. And if you're trying to find the interior dynamics, which is like the relationship between these two, they both need each other, which I share with Noah as well. They both need each other. One cannot exist without another. Precisely because when there's light, there will be darkness. Darkness is just the absence of light. And then one would not exist without each other. And your strength, it's also your weakness. Your weakness is also your strength. You find weakness before you find your strength. And then with strength, you also find weakness. So now I'm trying to grow at the same time as well, trying to understand myself and then trying to be more just me lah.
My partner was Kenneth, and what was super interesting actually was the both of us went through like a similar process in the journaling questions. So it was definitely a lot quicker and easier for us to write down like ways we feel superior. But when we went to like ways we feel inferior, that was a bit slower and more difficult. But what was interesting to find out was also that like in our conversation, we were like, Kenneth and I were at two ends of the spectrum, like opposite ends of the spectrum. We talked about independence and codependence, and how that basically fueled our behaviors, and kind of what the motivations behind what we pursue. And they were all in it was, I guess it was kind of interesting to see that like at the towards the end it was kind of like finding a balance between both. Kenneth was, and how like these things that made us feel superior could also be the downfall, our downfall or our like shortcomings. So that was what appeared for the both of us, and or when we started identifying all the fears and the interior dynamics. Yeah. Kenneth, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, it was interesting how we were really trying to link superiority and inferiority, comparing the two. But kind of towards the end of our discussion, we realized that it almost seems like the roles can be swapped in terms of inferiority is superiority and superiority is inferiority. And it's this in the superior side, we like I was trying to reach let's say, a level of perfectionism, right? That's superiority at its finest. But that is actually quite inferior. In a sense, we are all striving towards the top in this individualistic world. But if we put that in the inferiority sense and realize that it is quite a big issue to be superior, we start realizing other aspects of our life or the surroundings, the environment around, that should be built upon. And those are, the external sources are more superior in a sense. It's not just individualistic. You start thinking of groups as whole. Yeah, I think that's how we kind of co-balance both sides.
Okay, thanks, Joan and Kenneth. Any other sharings?
Echoing like what Kenneth was saying about like the sort of like the connection between the superiority and inferiority. It's something that we touched on a little bit too. I had the great pleasure of sharing 2 breakout rooms at Ben today, and talking about sort of like the connection between the two. It's funny the way that you phrase the questions as well about interior dynamics. You know, they are intrinsically connected, and a lot of the time I think our superiority complexes is almost like a shield to what makes us feel inferior. Like for me personally, like I've always, especially more so in my youth, I've always felt very superior in like how my ability to like express myself, my ability to process things and express them, whether it's through writing or speaking, my ability to communicate in a language that is widely known and universally accepted, you know. But reflecting on it today, I feel it's very apparent to me that a lot of that early sort of like superiority is very much linked to a feeling of disconnect. The fact that I'm not very, like I'm very proficient in English, but any other language don't harap me lah, you know. Like I always, like within the TRC team, right, I'm usually the go-to to translate things into Malay, and I'm always saying like, what a sad what a sad world we live in if like I'm your go-to for Malay translations. And you know, that sort of inability to express myself in that language kind of like made me feel superior. Like I always like to, like these days I always like to say I'm a former grammar Nazi, just because I feel like that was something that was very important to me, and that was like especially in my youth. But as I've gotten older and gotten to learn more things, I've let go of, you know, because I think it's something that was, like I said, my shield, but also something that was sort of creating a disconnect between me and my surrounding community.
Thanks, Emily. Anything else? Say another 5 minutes.
So both Isaac and me feel that education makes us both feel inferior and superior in the same time. So the education that we receive makes us feel superior because we have the skill, and when we get to do the skill and contribute, it makes us both feel like, oh, okay, I'm good at what I do. So, you know, so you feel superior, like you're good at that. But then when you connect with someone that has higher knowledge, something like that with you, you just feel like, oh, I should have continued my study further so that we can have that intelligent conversation. But in a way, it's also a blessing when we let go of not pursuing our education. So we both feel that not pursuing our education makes us feel like, oh, so inferior in a long time. But when we both expose ourselves with different things kan in our life, we felt that it's actually a blessing, and it's more like the traditional way of gaining knowledge. So like when you go on ground kan, it's hands-on. When you connect with people, you actually experience new things. So we both feel that the traditional way of sharing knowledge, just like the Vanuatu sharing, you know, when they go on ground and then they want to know what's wrong, it's not linear, it's very organic. We connect with that lah. Me and Isaac, we connect with that type. And then doing the comms, because I was also comms and he's now doing tech and comms. The bird's eye view, memang tak puas hati lah. Memang kau tak puas hati doing work with the bird's eye view. Because it's, the perspective kan, it's linear bah. So it's better for us both if we just go to the ground and we experience more. We feel that we connect more to that. And then in the future, me and Isaac, we feel that we should have more opportunity to go to the ground and expose ourselves more, to have this more perspective, to learn more, to find the path for ourselves. I think what's interesting, that my point is that when you facilitate a conversation, when you want to try understand an issue kan, do you see it? Kalau biasa kita buat facilitation kan, itu facilitator dia ada kuasa bah. That facilitator has the power to guide that conversation. Tapi kalau saya, what I noticed, that facilitator always have this power to guide the conversation. Kalau kita tengok Western punya type of facilitation, but when we go to the ground, kalau kita connect dengan orang kampung kan, the conversation is not facilitated. It's organic, you see. You pass around tompong. The tompong is being passed around, and issues just like go out and you connect more with people, but in the same time that issue is being brought out. There's no power guiding or like somewhat tompong is the facilitator, like Noel said in the message. So yeah, it's interesting lah to explore more on the traditional way of decision making, the traditional way of connecting with the people around you, rather than it's being linear, you know, like having someone to guide a space, to have someone to have that pressure to guide that space. And then you have this idea that, okay, I'm not connecting with this person. This person is not getting me, but are you sure maybe it's you that is not getting the culture that, okay, sorry, I'm babbling. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Yana. It's 12:35. I'd like to see if there's one more voice. I specifically want to invite someone who hasn't spoken.
I partnered with a listener just now, and let me see if I can put my thoughts into coherent sentences. We both had very similar experiences, I think. We actually struggled to think about ways that we felt superior. We had more things listed on the right side of our paper, but what we chose as something that made us feel superior was very specific. It was one thing that was very specific. And then when we got to discussing about the worry we had of that slipping away, of course, a listener, you can add that this was just my conclusion from our discussion. It felt like it boiled down to ego, that we had ego where we didn't want to share that special thing we had with other people because we didn't want it to be taken away from us. So it also led to, you know, our that need to have individuality to stand out from people, because when we talked about it, we had similar backgrounds in a way growing up. Elisna, she went to school with in a very small community, so the scrutiny was really there on her as a kid. And me myself, my father is a pastor, so you know, you're always being used as an example in his sermon. So there's just an expectation to live up to. So it kind of led to us growing up in a way that made you be scared of risks. You know, you don't want to make a mistake because, you know, so many people are watching you. And then we become, I mean, if I talk about the left side of my, the right side of my paper, I summarized everything down. I said, anything that involves me standing out, like, you know, speaking my opinion or sharing something, it actually makes me feel inferior. So it kind of led to that. And yeah, I think all these external factors are impacting how we develop as an individual. But at the same time, you know, sharing the space with FS has also in a way helped to help us to re-evaluate our feelings or our confidence. Yeah, macam tu lah.
I think that's a great way to wrap up. Okay, see you in an hour.